When a pope dies, the world holds its breath. A plume of smoke rises above the Sistine Chapel, and billions watch in silence. But few truly understand what happens next. Behind the locked doors beneath that chimney, a centuries-old ritual unfolds. Absolute silence. No phones, no signals. Just 120 men cloaked in crimson, deciding the fate of 1.3 billion souls. And in a world where leaders are elected on debate stages or through algorithms, the Catholic Church still chooses its highest authority with handwritten ballots, whispered alliances, and ancient oaths. Today on Armchair Archaeology, in this video, we're pulling back the veil on the Papal Conclave, its hidden politics, global power dynamics, and the astonishing traditions that have endured for over 700 years. And if you stay with us, you'll discover one of the strangest rituals in Vatican history, a final test involving a silver hammer, a mirror, and a ceremonial confirmation that the Pope is truly dead. Before we dive into the origins of the conclave, don't forget to subscribe to Armchair Archaeology. If you're fascinated by hidden rituals, ancient power plays, and the stories history tries to forget, this is the channel for you. The Papal Conclave, now a ritual of solemnity and global significance, was born not in peace or holiness, but in deadlock, political frustration, and public outrage. In the early centuries of the Church, papal elections were chaotic affairs. Roman clergy, local nobility, and even mobs of citizens often competed to influence the outcome. With no formal structure, the process could spiral into violence, bribery, or prolonged vacancy. That instability reached a breaking point after the death of Pope Clement IV in 1268. The cardinals met in the town of Viterbo to choose a successor. Weeks passed, then months, then years. Personal rivalries, national interests, and factional politics stalled any progress. The people of Viterbo, watching their town become the epicenter of paralysis, took drastic action. They locked the cardinals inside the palace, cut off their meals, and finally removed the roof to expose them to the elements. Cold rain and scorching sun would now accompany their prayers. This desperate act forced a decision. A pope was finally chosen in 1271, and the episode became the turning point. Recognizing the need for reform, Pope Gregory X institutionalized the conclave at the Second Council of Lyon in 1274. His decree, Ubi Periculum, introduced strict rules. Cardinals were to be enclosed cum clave with a key, separated from the outside world until a choice was made. It's one of the great ironies of church history. The sacred enclosure that defines the modern conclave didn't originate from divine inspiration. It began as a public demand for accountability and a very physical reminder that the Church could not afford to wait. What we now view as a holy tradition began with a city tearing the roof off power. Even after the conclave was formalized in the 13th century, the medieval papacy remained a battleground. Locking the doors was meant to keep politics out, but power has a way of slipping through the cracks. Kings, emperors, and elite Roman families still saw the papacy not as a spiritual office, but as a throne to be won. Factions within the College of Cardinals often mirrored rivalries across Europe. French and Italian blocs, Roman aristocrats like the Colonna and Orsini, and clerics loyal to secular crowns all vied to push their candidate forward. The Holy Spirit may have been invoked, but so were armies, bribes, and blackmail. The Conclave of 1314 stands as one of the most volatile. Following the death of Pope Clement V, the cardinals convened in Avignon, but factional deadlock soon halted progress. Tensions escalated into open violence. Riots broke out in the city, forcing the cardinals to suspend the election abandon the process entirely, and relocate. One chronicler described the atmosphere as closer to a siege than a sacred gathering. It would take over 2 years before a new pope, John the 22nd, was finally elected. The need for secrecy was so severe that armed guards were stationed around some conclaves, not to protect the cardinals, but to make sure they didn't escape or send messages to allies outside. The locked room was both sanctuary and prison. In a way, these medieval conclaves functioned like early political summits, where faith met realpolitik, and backroom deals determined the future of the church. But unlike modern elections, there was no press coverage, no transparency, only silence, smoke, and suspicion. The conclave had been born, but it was still learning how to survive. Its rules were strong, its rituals were growing, but the human hunger for power remained firmly sealed inside those walls. If you're fascinated by how ancient institutions maintained control through ritual and structure, you'll want to unlock the pages of Secrets of the Ancient World, our new ebook that reveals how forgotten societies engineered order, mystery, and meaning. Check the pinned comment for the link. The word conclave feels sacred now, but its meaning is rooted in something much more physical. From the Latin cum clave, with a key, it referred quite literally to the locking in of cardinals until they chose a new pope. It wasn't metaphor, it was policy, and it was a response to centuries of chaos. After the Viterbo crisis, Pope Gregory X decreed in 1274 that no cardinal would leave the election until a decision was reached. There would be no comforts, no luxury, and no escape. The electors were to be sealed in, kept on a restricted diet, and isolated from all outside contact. Their rooms were simple, their communication cut off. Only food, water, and prayer would enter. But when even those measures failed to force agreement, stricter methods followed. In some elections, walls were literally bricked up around the cardinals after they entered, with narrow slits left for meals to be passed through. Guards were posted not to defend the room, but to ensure no one could flee. The idea was as psychological as it was logistical. When faced with physical discomfort, limited resources, and no distractions, the electors would be more likely to seek divine clarity, or at the very least, consensus. It was both ritual and pressure cooker. And though the ritual has softened over time, the philosophy remains. In today's conclaves, cardinals are still housed in isolation, unable to call, text, or email the outside world. In an era of live streams and open debates, the election of a pope is still conducted behind closed doors, in total silence. What part of the conclave surprises you the most? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing which details spark your curiosity. The term conclave may sound ceremonial, but at its core, it's about control, it's about urgency, and it's about reminding the Church that divine decisions sometimes need very human boundaries. Once the papal seat is officially declared vacant, the Church shifts into ritualized motion. The process begins with 9 days of mourning and liturgical ceremonies. Then, the cardinals eligible to vote, those under the age of 80, gather in Rome. While they represent diverse nations and perspectives, they are bound by a single mission: to select the next pope. The ritual formally begins with a special Mass in St. Peter's Basilica, the Missa pro elegendo pontifice. The ceremony is typically led by the Dean of the College of Cardinals, who plays a central role in guiding the process. Afterward, the electors proceed into the Sistine Chapel. Surrounded by Michelangelo's vision of the Last Judgment, they swear an oath of secrecy. As the command extra omnes, everyone out, is issued, the doors close. Only the cardinals remain. Inside, the rules are strict. No phones, no internet, no contact with the outside world. The chapel is scanned for hidden microphones. Signal jammers are activated. The Sistine Chapel even functions as a kind of digital bunker, completely shielded from outside communication. Every precaution is taken to protect the integrity of the vote. Balloting is solemn and structured. Each cardinal writes the name of his chosen candidate on a slip of paper, folds it, and carries it to the altar. There, he places it into a chalice. 3 tellers count and record the votes aloud. If no one reaches a 2/3 majority, another round begins. This continues until consensus is achieved. After each round, the ballots are burned in a specially designed stove. Chemicals are added to produce black smoke if no pope is chosen, or white if a decision has been made. The world waits in anticipation. In a time defined by instant results and public debates, the papacy is still decided by paper ballots, ritual silence, and a signal rising from a chimney, timeless, unspoken, and unmistakably deliberate. For most people watching a conclave unfold, the drama comes down to a single visual: smoke rising from a chimney on the Sistine Chapel. Black for no decision, white for a new pope. It's simple, elegant, and surprisingly recent. This signaling method began in 1878 during the election of Pope Leo XIII. Before that, the public had no immediate clue about the conclave's progress. The Church introduced smoke signals as a visual message to the crowds gathering in St. Peter's Square. But for decades, the smoke itself caused more confusion than clarity. Ballots burned on their own produced an inconsistent grayish smoke, which often left observers guessing. In 1958, a puff of pale smoke was mistakenly celebrated as white, triggering bells and cheers, only for the Vatican to announce hours later that no pope had been elected. The world had misread the signal. In response, the Church turned to science. Today, the stove inside the chapel has 2 chambers, one for burning ballots and another for producing smoke. To ensure clarity, a carefully tested chemical blend, including compounds like potassium chlorate, is added to create thick, unmistakable white smoke. Black smoke is made using a different combination. The chemical recipes are tested and rehearsed beforehand to eliminate doubt. And so, the most sacred decision in the Catholic Church, choosing its supreme leader, is still announced not by press release, live stream, or tweet, but by a plume of smoke curling into the Roman sky. It's a moment where the medieval and the modern collide. Inside, cardinals vote with paper. Outside, the world watches with smartphones. But all wait for the same signal, one colorless message that speaks volumes without saying a word. Just like the smoke rising from the Sistine Chapel, ancient civilizations had powerful ways of communicating meaning through symbols, rituals, and technology. Our ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World, dives into those stories. Check the pinned comment if you're ready to explore them. The Papal Conclave is often described as a purely spiritual event, guided by prayer and divine inspiration. But behind the locked doors of the Sistine Chapel, the dynamics are more complex. The process is sacred, yes, but it's also strategic. The cardinals don't just vote, they maneuver. Each elector arrives with convictions shaped by theology, regional priorities, and the needs of the modern church. Some emphasize doctrinal clarity, others focus on reform or global outreach. Quickly, informal factions emerge, often along ideological lines or based on geography. A group of African or Latin American cardinals might vote with a shared focus on social justice. European cardinals might prioritize church governance or tradition. At the center of this are the papabili, the so-called popable cardinals. These are the figures who generate quiet buzz, but being too popular too early can backfire. In many conclaves, a leading candidate becomes the focus of resistance, not unity. It's often the one who seems acceptable to all, but threatening to none, who emerges as a frontrunner in the final rounds. Though open campaigning is forbidden, cardinals talk. In the residence halls of the Domus Sanctae Martha, where they eat and sleep during the conclave, alliances form over shared meals and whispered conversations. In one account, a single dinner conversation reportedly shifted 12 votes overnight. And sometimes, the shift is dramatic. There have been conclaves where 12 votes changed overnight, transforming an overlooked candidate into the new pope by morning. It's a process with no speeches, no press, no public positioning, just persuasion, trust, and silence. The Holy Spirit is believed to guide the result, but he may work through compromise, retreat, or a well-timed word in the hallway. Inside the most sacred room in Catholicism, the game of consensus unfolds, not loudly, but deliberately, and with global consequence. One of the paradoxes of the Papal Conclave is that the man most likely to become pope often doesn't. The frontrunners, the so-called papabili, enter with momentum and recognition. But history shows that the electors often turn away from the expected and instead choose someone quieter, less divisive, someone who wasn't in the spotlight at all. It's not about avoiding leadership, it's about building consensus. When the vote stalls across several ballots, cardinals start looking not for their favorite candidate, but for the one they can all live with. It's often a strategic compromise, and that's how some of the most surprising and transformative popes have been chosen. In 1958, Cardinal Angelo Roncalli was widely considered a placeholder, a transitional pope who would preserve stability. But he became Pope John XXIII, and to nearly everyone's astonishment, he convened the Second Vatican Council, which reshaped Catholic life around the world. Something similar happened in 2013. While Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio of Argentina had been mentioned in passing, he was not seen as a leading contender. But after several deadlocked rounds, his name began circulating more seriously. His humility, distance from the Vatican bureaucracy, and geographic neutrality made him a unifying figure. He emerged as Pope Francis, the first Jesuit, the first Latin American pope, and a voice for reform and inclusion. Just 8 years earlier, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, despite being a high-profile Vatican figure, was elected in 2005 as a conservative continuity candidate, showing how different conclaves reward different traits. These choices reveal something deeper about the conclave. It doesn't just reward power or prestige. It rewards timing, humility, and the ability to stand at the center of many competing hopes. Sometimes the next pope is the obvious choice, but more often, he's the candidate no one feared, no one pushed, and yet, in the final moment, everyone could trust. If you appreciate the depth of research in our videos and want to help us keep digging deeper, consider hitting the super thanks button below. Your support truly helps bring forgotten history back to life. In an era of leaks, live streams, and 24/7 speculation, the Papal Conclave remains one of the last truly secretive events in global leadership. It's a striking contrast. While world leaders are chosen on televised debate stages and tracked by pollsters in real time, the election of a pope happens in silence, completely sealed off from the outside world. The Vatican has taken extreme measures to protect that silence. Before a conclave begins, technicians sweep the Sistine Chapel and the cardinal's residence for surveillance equipment. Signal blocking devices are installed. Communication is cut entirely. Cardinals surrender all phones, tablets, and even smartwatches. Any violation of secrecy, no matter how small, results in automatic excommunication. But modern threats require modern defenses. In 2005, The Vatican went even further. They installed a Faraday cage inside the Sistine Chapel, a copper-lined shield that blocks all electromagnetic signals. It's the same technology used in military bunkers and diplomatic safe rooms. Inside that chamber of frescoes and faith, no signal gets in or out. Compare that to presidential elections, where candidates live stream, tweet, and debate in front of millions. Meanwhile, outside the walls, the media speculates relentlessly. Journalists monitor every movement. Who's meeting with whom? Which cardinals are unusually quiet? What flags are flying at Vatican guest houses? Entire articles are written about the absence of information. Yet for all the pressure, the silence holds. No cameras, no microphones, no headlines until the smoke rises. That silence is more than security. It's part of the ritual. It strips away public performance, leaving only conscience, prayer, and decision. In a world addicted to transparency, the conclave reminds us that mystery still has power, and that some of the most consequential choices are made not in the spotlight, but in the dark. For centuries, the papacy was a European institution, and more specifically, an Italian one. The College of Cardinals reflected that imbalance. Its members were overwhelmingly European, steeped in Roman tradition and shaped by Western political concerns. But today's church looks very different. Over 2/3 of the world's Catholics now live outside Europe. In Latin America, Africa, and parts of Asia, Catholicism is not only growing, it's thriving. These communities bring different priorities: grassroots pastoral care, economic justice, interfaith coexistence, and the day-to-day challenges of life in developing regions. And recent popes have begun to recognize this shift. In the past few decades, there's been a deliberate effort to diversify the College of Cardinals. Countries like the Philippines, Nigeria, Brazil, and South Korea are now regularly represented in the conclave. The result is a more global conversation, one that reshapes what kind of leader the Church seeks. This diversity isn't just symbolic. It has already changed outcomes. In 2013, cardinals from the global South made up nearly 40% of the electorate, a historic first. Their influence was decisive in electing Jorge Mario Bergoglio of Argentina Pope Francis, the first pope from the Americas and the first non-European in over 100 years. As Catholicism's demographic heart moves southward, so do its concerns. Climate change, poverty, and migration are no longer distant problems. They're daily realities for much of the Church. And when cardinals enter the Sistine Chapel, they carry those realities with them. The papacy is no longer a mirror of Rome alone. It is increasingly a reflection of Kinshasa, Manila, Sao Paulo, and Seoul. The question is no longer whether the conclave will reflect the global Church. It already does. The real question now is what that means for the Church's future. History isn't just European, it's global. And if you want to dive deeper into the rise and fall of forgotten empires across the world, our ebook Secrets of the Ancient World is the perfect place to start. Links in the pinned comment. When a new pope is finally chosen, the world won't hear it from the cardinals. Not at first. Inside the Sistine Chapel, the newly elected pontiff is quietly asked one question: do you accept your canonical election as supreme pontiff? If he answers yes, the second follows: by what name shall you be called? That choice is more than a formality. It's his first message to the world. Names speak volumes. A pope who chooses John often signals pastoral warmth. Benedict might suggest intellectual tradition. Francis, a name never before used, evoked humility, poverty, and reform. That first decision is quiet, but loaded with meaning. After accepting, the Pope is led to a side chamber near the chapel called the Room of Tears. 3 white cassocks await, small, medium, and large, because the Vatican prepares for any possibility. It's a place of emotion, disorientation, and preparation. Some popes enter smiling, others break down in tears. The transformation from cardinal to pontiff happens alone, off camera, under immense emotional weight. Then comes the reveal. The cardinal proto-deacon steps out onto the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica and declares, "Habemus Papam, we have a pope." The world watches, the bells ring, the crowd stirs, and a new pope walks forward. In 2013, Pope Francis did something extraordinary. Before offering his first apostolic blessing, he asked the people to pray for him. It was a gesture so unexpected that it stunned the crowd into silence before they erupted in applause. It was humility live in front of the world. The papacy begins not with power, but presence. One man steps out alone, bearing 2,000 years of history, facing the weight of the modern world. The Papal Conclave is often seen as a ritual frozen in time, but it is, in truth, a living reflection of the Church itself, ancient and modern, sacred and strategic, shaped as much by people as by prayer. In a world where leaders rise and fall in public view, the election of a pope happens in silence, behind sealed doors, and yet its impact radiates across the globe. What happens inside the Sistine Chapel is not just about theology, it's about the direction of one of the world's oldest institutions. A new pope can shift global conversations on war, migration, climate, justice, and human dignity. His words matter, his presence matters. And that decision still begins not with noise, but with stillness. At the beginning of this video, we promise to reveal one of the strangest and least known rituals in papal history. It happens not during the election, but at the moment a papacy ends. Before the conclave begins, the Church must confirm that the papal throne is truly vacant. And for centuries, this was done not by machines or doctors, but by ritual. The Camerlengo would approach the deceased pope, call his baptismal name 3 times, and, if there was no response, tap his forehead gently with a silver hammer. A mirror was held to the mouth to check for breath. Only then was death officially declared. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the hidden world of the Papal Conclave. If you found this exploration meaningful, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to Armchair Archaeology. What secret traditions should we uncover next? Let us know in the comments, and until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the past alive.